Hello and welcome to Truth Matters Unplugged. In this video, I want to address the analysis that Chris Martenson of Peak Prosperity presented in two videos that he made recently. What you see on the screen here is one of his videos. It's titled Analysis Solves the Kirk Case. Evidence points away from Robinson's position. He concludes that Robinson could not have been the killer or the shooter. And so I want to address this because these two videos have been referenced in multiple other channels. They've garnered a lot of attention. He's been praised for his work, and rightly so, because he did a lot diligent. He was very diligent about collecting evidence and so forth, and presented it very meticulously. However, even meticulous work can be wrong. And I want to point out, as a scientist and as a researcher all my life, that there are other ways of approaching this, and he may have made some big mistakes. Okay, I will not argue that I'm 100% correct, but what I'm afraid of is that I've seen a lot of channels simply abandon the working theory. The working theory being the narrative that we have at the moment from the official narrative that the alleged killer is Tyler Robinson. And I don't think that we should jump to those kinds of conclusions too quickly. So in a later video, I'm going to show you how to compare different theories, different hypotheses against the available body of evidence, which is sparse, I agree, and very questionable. But how do you compare different hypotheses and do it in a meticulous, organized way so that you can map it out and compare them? But what I want to address in this video is particularly Chris Martenson's first video and the analysis that he did there. In the second video, I agree with about 70% of what he said. He starts the video off with, with the conclusion. He uses the premise from the first video for the second video. I disagree with the premise of the first video. And then he makes some statements that I think that I'd like to address. So that's what I'm going to do in this video. Step by step is going to be quick, and I'm going to try to be as clear as possible. So before I do that, I want to mention that when I saw his analysis the first time, because I watched the video, I was quite amused. And the reason I was amused is because it reminded me of an old article that appeared in 2002 that I really enjoyed. Now, just to give you the reason, that is, just to give you some background, I am from the hard sciences. I come out of a physics, engineering background. I've been a researcher all my life, senior scientist and so forth, and tenured professor, did a lot of research. I have patents, I have written a lot of papers, international recognition, you name it. So my approach is going to be based on how a physicist would do it, or an engineer would do it. And it's the same as the hard sciences. We're going to use a scientific method in a particular way. Chris Martenson, in his own words, is a pathologist. In other words, he studied diseases. And his thesis, his dissertation, when he conducted his PhD, was in toxology. PhD is Doctor of Philosophy. In other words, he wrote a dissertation in which he philosophized about toxins and toxology. This has nothing to do with ballistics or with, an investigation like this. Neither does my degree. He and I have one thing in common, is we've fired a lot of firearms, shot a lot of bullets. We've pulled the trigger many, many times. My approach is just going to be different. And I may have more experience dealing with problems, dealing with different materials, dealing with things that shoot fast, and so forth. I'm not going to give you too much details. That we'll do in other videos. But let me show you this article that I'm referencing. It's called Can a Biologist Fix a Radio? Or What I Learned While Studying Apoptosis. And this came out in September of 2002. So almost exactly 23 years ago. And it's a hilarious article. It's written very well by the author. And but it's funny and humorous because it is so correct and on point as to how things actually go between people from the biologies and people from the hard sciences. Okay? So let me read for you. I'm going to expand the screen here so you can also read it. See if I can do that. There we go. I'm just going to read here on page 2 and start reading. So there's a broken radio. How would biologists tackle the problem of fixing the radio? Okay, and this is the biologist that's writing the article. He says, how would we begin? First, we would secure funds to obtain a large supply of identical functioning radios in order to dissect and compare them to the one that is broken. We would eventually find how to open the radios and will find objects of various shape, color, and size. We would describe and classify them into families according to their appearance. We would describe a family of square metal objects, a family of round, brightly colored objects with 2 legs, round-shaped objects with 3 legs, and so on. Because the objects would vary in color, we would investigate whether changing the color affects the radio's performance. He goes on to say that although changing the colors would have only attenuating effects, this approach will produce many publications and result in a lively debate. A more successful approach would be to remove components one at a time, or to use a variation of the method in which a radio is shot at a close range with metal particles. In the latter case, radios that malfunction, or in parentheses have a phenotype, are selected to identify the component whose damage causes the phenotype. Although removing some components will have only an attenuating effect, a lucky postdoc will accidentally find a wire whose deficiency will stop the music completely. The jubilant fellow will name their wire serendipitously recovered component, or SRC, and then find that SRC is required because it is the only link between a long extendable object and the rest of the radio. The object will be appropriately named the most important component, or MIC, of the radio. A series of studies will definitively establish that MIC should be made of metal, and the longer the object is, the better, which would provide an evolutionary explanation for the finding that the object is extendable. And so on. You can read, it continues on that. It's a fantastic little article and hilarious. And so go at it. I'll put the link to this article in the description so you can also read it for yourself. Okay? And this is really what I want to illustrate. What I want to point out here is that Chris he collected all the evidence, he collected a lot of material, he did a lot of work to analyze it, he went very meticulously through things, but his approach is different from what a scientist would do, or a physicist. Okay, biologists don't like it when we don't want to call them scientists, so let's say they also are scientists, and they also use a scientific method. It's just the approach is completely different. Okay, does that make sense? So let me go here to a little slideshow that I have just to organize my thoughts. I have this also down. This is the thumbnail, I believe, from Chris's video. He says, analysis, the title was Analysis Solves Kirk Case. Evidence Points Away from Robinson's Position. All right. So he says the case is solved. And I'm saying, really? Now, not so fast, citizen. Let's look carefully at what you've done. But what Chris think he solved is that Charlie Kirk was assassinated with a high-velocity rifle round and Tyler Robinson could not have taken the kill shot. Okay, so Tyler, he basically clears Robinson here and says he could not have been the one. And this has been, a lot of people took this video and ran with it. And they went and they simply abandoned Tyler Robinson being a shooter. And they're looking for there are several conspiracies. Now listen, I'm not against finding alternative hypotheses of what could have happened. Who could have been, who had a motive, who could have taken the shot, etc., etc. I'm not against that. I'm not against speculation. I'm in favor of it. And those of you in the comments who say that, no, you should not speculate, you should wait for the official, you should let the professionals do their job and write their reports and wait for the official documentation to come out. You're wrong. Speculation is part of every formal discovery. Any formal inquiry will require some speculation. Whether it's a criminal investigation, whether it's medical diagnosis, whether it's trying to solve something else, whether it's trying to invent something, whether it's trying to come up with a scientific theory or write a patent, solve a problem. It is because we cannot be innovative unless we are imaginative. We cannot come up with new things that don't exist as human beings unless we use this particular characteristic that we have as humans that we call an imagination, which is unique among mammals on the earth. We have an imagination. We are able to hallucinate things that don't exist and invent them and make them work. That's how we have advanced as a human species. You have to be able to imagine and hallucinate. And it doesn't have to be with drugs. I'm not talking about drugs here. I'm using hallucinate loosely as a synonym for imagine. And, think of something that doesn't exist and picture it in your head. Imagine it and then make it into practice. So speculation is healthy. Carry on speculating, especially since the body of evidence that we've been receiving from the DOJ, the FBI, the official channels have been so sparse and so questionable. I think we can all agree that we don't have enough evidence to really solve the case conclusively. And we'll probably wait another 80 years for the files to be declassified. I don't know if we'll ever find out what happened in Butler, Pennsylvania. There's another case that is where there's lingering questions, massive holes in the story. How is it possible for a young man to fly a drone before an event where a former president is speaking, where there's going to be Secret Service and everything, and a lot of law enforcement, to scope out the area, flies a drone, then walks around suspiciously with a rangefinder, then makes his way on a building's roof within a stone's throw of where the president is about to speak with a rifle. Come on now. We are not that stupid. Not only that, that building and the adjacent building were full of law enforcement. Give me a break. Not to mention, other things like ladders that were pictured, that weren't pictures and then disappeared, giving access to that roof and so forth. I don't think you can get within a stone's throw of the president with a telephoto lens unless you have been cleared by the Secret Service, or with a Nerf gun. Forget it. I remember when each time a president visited our town where I live in a small town, and the airport where the Air Force One could land is about 45 minutes from where he would speak. Now I tell you, every time this has happened, the freeway was blocked off and came to a standstill. The entire freeway from the airport to here was blocked off, and for that convoy to pass. Every bridge had law enforcement with lights on. And you could not move. You could not, everything came to a standstill. People were saying, please don't ever come again because it's just wrecking traffic. And then the day before, there were Secret Service and FBI and people in plainclothes and people in uniforms scoping out everything near on the campus where the event was to take place. And then the day of, there were snipers and Secret Service on roofs and in buildings and everywhere, stationed everywhere. You could not, clean your ears without the Secret Service knowing about it. So don't tell me that a young man can do that. So, and I think we are on the same JFK trend with crooks in Butler, Pennsylvania. Those files will be declassified, 100 years from now. We will never know the truth. And it's a pity. It's no wonder the FBI has such a bad reputation. Nobody trusts them. Trust them less than they trust the media, the mainstream media. And I think there's a component of incompetence as well. Now, I've known people in the FBI who are fantastic. But I think overall as an agency, you've lost your reputation. They might as well disband the thing. With what they are giving us, how the lack of transparency, and the sheer problems with all the evidence that they are providing us, it's just not healthy. So I think this corruption is one component, and incompetence is another component, and might as well start over, disband the thing. Get it over with. Okay, so back to Chris Martenson's video. So I have a problem with this. I'm going to show you that we need to step back, not be too fast to conclude this. And the first problem that I'm going to point out, or before I point out problems, let's just look at what Chris did. So he mapped out the area. This is a drone shot from the top, a top view of where the tent was positioned, under which Charlie was stationed at UVU. And he used that with Google Maps, Google Earth, or whatever satellite imagery to calculate elevation angle of the bullet. And then he used frames of available videos that captured the point of entry, and then he now wanted to map that onto images like this, which is out of a medical textbook or something he found on the internet, that shows just a skeleton, side view of a human skeleton, so that you could see and with an approximate entry position for the bullet, and this line here represents the bullet's trajectory. Now I'm going to zoom in for you so that you can actually see that better. And he wants to see whether the bullet's trajectory actually intersects with the correct vertebrae, the vertebrae that were damaged, that were hit according to the official reports. And secondly, we want to find answers about whether a 30-06, the official caliber, makes any sense, right? I think a lot of people, and I agree too, that a normal 30-06 would have caused more damage, leaving massive exit wounds, and it would have been a different story. So here's another textbook graphic that he uses, and again this dotted line shows the trajectory of the bullet at the 10-degree elevation angle that he calculated. Now, unfortunately, Chris does not say how he calculated these 10-degree elevation angle. I will tell you how you can do it. You'd use Google Maps or Google Earth or some satellite imagery from somewhere, Microsoft or Apple Maps or someplace. to estimate the distance between the muzzle, where the muzzle would have been, and where Charlie would have sat, to get where the bullet exited the muzzle and where the bullet penetrated the flesh for the first time. You would then need the height difference between muzzle and point of impact. That is a little bit more challenging. And then you would use the inverse tangent function to calculate the elevation angle by using the inverse tangent of the height divided by the distance. And that would give you the angle. All right. Now, what Chris did then further is he used another cross section of a person's neck, showing the spine or the vertebrae here, and approximating the bullet's entry wound, where it made impact with the neck, and then mapping on that the windage angle. The windage angle you can get by knowing where the sniper's nest is and where Charlie sat and looking at it from above and just using a protractor to calculate what that angle would have been. Assuming that you know in which direction Charlie was facing. And this is what he got. And he shows that this bullet could not possibly have intersected or hit any bone, because this is where the bone is, and the bullet is passing by the bone. And so, first of all, it did not shatter bone like the official report claims. And secondly, this would have resulted in a massive exit wound, perhaps severing the head from the body. Now, I want to say something about a 30-06, because the 30-06 is a very powerful round. It is a massive cartridge. It's bigger than a 308 or a 5.56. And it is not a gun that you would typically want to use for small game or deer. It's not a gun that you would use for deer. Do you know in Africa, there were instances where people used 30-06 to hunt big game like African elephant and African buffalo. Now those two are extremely hard to hunt and very dangerous to hunt, because if you simply wound an animal, it will kill you. It will kill the hunter. It'll come after you. So for an elephant and for a buffalo, you need something with a punch. Many countries in Africa have banned the use of calibers that are too small, including 30-06, for hunting elephant and buffalo. But my point is that there was a time, and there were instances where people used 30-06 because it's marginal. It's marginal. It is, I think, it is the largest small caliber round that you could maybe get away with hunting an elephant or a buffalo. That just gives you an idea of how powerful the weapon is, because an elephant has a very, very tough skin and very thick skin, and cracking the bone, if you want to shoot it between the eyes, you're gonna need something with a lot of energy. It's a big bone, it's a thick bone, it's a strong bone, and it's a strong skin, and it's not an easy kill as far as hunting goes. So shooting a human with an elephant gun or something close to an elephant gun it's like you're using this is like a cannon, right? It's a cannon that you're using. So it's a big gun for a human. Okay. Chris then maps a person's sitting down on a chair onto a top view of it onto a piece of paper. And he uses that with a protractor to again show that the windage, with the windage angle for the bullet's trajectory, that the bullet would not have intersected the vertebrae. And you can see here this little black dot is the point of impact. This line, this blue line, is the windage and the bullet's trajectory. And this little circle here in the back is the spine, or where the vertebrae would be. This blue circle is an approximation of the neck. of the individual sitting down. So that would represent this piece, this right here. Okay, now I'm going to stop. Now I'm going to scrutinize this, because I believe that Chris's conclusion that the bullet could not have hit the neck vertebrae is wrong, and that he missed some important points. The first of which being Charlie's posture. Okay? When you are sitting in a chair, especially on let's say you sit on a kitchen stool with a little back, or a bar chair, bar stool or something, you tend to slump forward. Your shoulders, you tend to slump. It's just the way that you have to sit when you sit on something that's a little bit higher than a regular chair. I'm sitting in a very comfortable chair, so I'm sitting fairly back, but I can also slump. If I just sit forward, I can slump. I can also sit upright. But you can see, even if I sit upright or if I stand upright, this is all about the position my neck would be if I'm upright. And you can see my neck is not 100% vertical. It is slightly curved forward. It's forward. And my back may be even backwards, but there's a curve, right? And you can see this curve in Charlie, that his neck is curved forward from behind the shoulders, where his back curves down. But this does not agree with the graphic of this human skeleton. This human skeleton is in an upright position, and that is the angle of the neck. It doesn't show the back much of the back spine, but it is not the same posture as Charlie was. And this figure on the left here is a frame or two before the bullet made impact. So this is important to realize, because Chris Martenson's entire premise hinges on the accuracy of angles, and not just the angles of the bullet's trajectory, but also the angle at which the person's spine is curved, and in which how the body is positioned. And so the posture, it seems, was not accounted for very well. Also in this figure, you can see this skeleton in this graphic is in an upright position. It's not in a slumped seated position like Charlie is here. And so if you look at this trajectory of the bullet passing through the skeleton, it's exclusively in the neck. It's not hitting basically the torso at all. But if you look at the same bullet trajectory hitting Charlie in the neck, it's going to actually leave the neck and go into the torso without changing trajectory. It's going to be in the torso. It's going to have a much longer path through organic matter before it will even exit. Much longer than in this picture where the skeleton is erect. And the same thing, if you look at this figure here, this is for a neck which is horizontally cut. It's not for a neck which is cut at the angle of this trajectory. This elevation angle has a different cross section than what we see here. It's not just passing through a circle. It is passing through something much longer and much more elongated than a small circle that we see in this figure. That's not what this bullet passed through. And so what I'd like to do is just get a different floor plan for this person, the top view of a person sitting down. And I'm going to use Charlie himself, and even though Charlie is angled compared to from where we are, and he's not perpendicular to to our point of view here. He's slightly angled. We're going to correct for that. But look at this. This big circle is just representing the body. It's just an approximation of his body. The roundish oval is his head, and then the oval in the center is his neck. And so let's overlap that with Chris's body, and the heads match, the chests match, but look at where the back is. Look at where the back is going. This is the back of Charlie, actually. And the neck is also in a completely different place. It's not this little circle. This little circle is in a completely wrong spot. Okay? And so if we use the same entry for the bullet, approximately, this bullet would have passed through much more material than just that little circle. More than twice of it. Okay? And it would go into the torso without changing trajectory, and it would intersect spinal cord. It'll intersect bones. It'll intersect both neck and back vertebrae. And that is what posture, the difference in posture. That's just the difference in posture which does that. And I think Chris neglected to consider the actual posture. Now the next problem that I want to deal with is margins of error. Like I said before, in order to analyze the angles and the trajectory of the bullet in windage and in elevation angle, you can use Google Maps, Google Earth, Apple Maps, some satellite imagery. And when I used Google Earth, it has actually the tool there. It has a little ruler. You can just click, and you get the distance between 2 points in meters or in feet, depending on how your settings are. It's very convenient. Unfortunately, Google doesn't tell you what the accuracy of that measurement is. And I know that the accuracy is very low. There are several reasons for this. These are satellite images that are mapped, flat images that are mapped onto a round Earth, and a surface that is sloped, that has all kinds of slopes and elevation changes and so forth. And just the sheer process of imaging it and mapping it introduces large errors. So we can expect an error of at least 10% when we measure something. So what I did was I said, okay, let's take some intermediate. Let's say it's plus minus 5% on the 127.6 meters that I measured on Google Earth. I'm going to say it's plus minus 5% is the difference. Now, 10% on 13 or 130 meters would be 13 meters. That's quite a distance. 13 meters times 3, that's 39 feet. That's almost 40 feet in possible error that you have to consider. There are other uncertainties when we want to calculate the elevation angle or the windage. You need to know accurately where Charlie was positioned, and you need to know in which direction Charlie was facing. That angle is also going to be important. In addition to that, we don't know exactly where the sniper's nest were. We don't know where the muzzle of the gun was positioned exactly. So distances and angles are subject to large inaccuracies. These are the approximate results that Chris used. I believe I calculated he must have used about 22.6 meters for the elevation difference between muzzle and bullet impact point. And I would add plus or minus 4 meters to that for elevation. And elevation is, the height difference between muzzle and impact is most problematic to determine if you're not there to measure it actually, or you don't have the building plans. Now you can estimate it using Google Maps and or Google Earth, and using video material and pictures and so forth. You can estimate it looking at and say, estimate that a story is maybe 12 feet high, and there are 5 stories, and then you subtract some for the height of the chair and Charlie's torso. But you're going to be off. You're not sure how much it was, how much it really is, unless you have information from the campus itself. So the elevation is going to play a role. Now, if you have 13 meters, plus or minus, let's say, plus or minus 6.5 meters for the distance, and you have plus or minus 4 meters for the height between muzzle and then it changes. It gives you a big range for the angle, the elevation angle. That the elevation angle could be off by. And so when I calculated the windage, I did not get Chris's 10 degrees. I calculated something like 8.7 degrees. And when I calculated sorry, this is for the elevation angle, I calculated 8.7 degrees. And for the windage angle, I calculated something closer to 7.2 degrees. But like I said, it depends on so many factors that there's a large error, that an inaccuracy that we must account for, that Chris did not account for. Okay, so all in all, my conclusion here is simply that it's inconclusive. We do not have enough information to accurately say what the elevation angle, what the trajectory of that bullet was, even if it came from the right place. Okay, not based on the tools at our disposal. There are other factors to consider, because, like I said, we are questioning whether a 30-06 would have behaved the way it is reported. But we don't know much about the rifle, except we know that the official story is that he inherited it from his grandfather, or it was gifted to him by his grandfather. It seems to be a composite Mauser and bolt action. I think it's a Model 19. But we don't know the age of this rifle. We don't know the history of the rifle. We don't know if it's been repaired or modified, or if it was chambered in a different way. We have no information about it. Has it received a new barrel? Has it been rebarreled? We don't know. Have there been any modifications to this? Does it have a takedown kit? Has it been modified? I've sporterized an old World War II rifle to be a hunting rifle. I don't own it anymore. This was in my home country, but you can do a lot of things to a rifle like that. Next, the ammo. What do we know about the ammo? Nothing, except that it was engraved. It's 30-06. And 1 round was fired. This, as far as I know, that's the official story. Well, how were the bullets engraved? Not the bullets. Was it the casings that were engraved, or were the bullets, or what did he engrave? I don't know. Did he use a mechanical electric engraver, one of those with a tip that bounces up and down, that vibrates? Or did he use a fiber laser? Or did he use a pocket knife or a Sharpie? What did he use to engrave it? We don't know what he used to engrave it. Was it the bullet, or was it a cartridge that he engraved? I don't know. What do we know? Very little. Do we know what type of bullet it was? Do we know what the properties of the propellant were? What grain, what weight, what load, what type? Who manufactured it? Do we know whether it was a hollow point? Do we know full metal jacket? Was it a Chadwicker? Was it jacketed hollow point. What are we dealing with? What was it made of? Was it brass? Was it just lead? What was it? And then what age was this ammo? Do we know the storage conditions under which the ammo was stored? And what do we have any information about the ammo? How did the custodianship of this ammo work? Ammo degrades with time. There's a slow degradation of time, usually if it's kept in a cool, dry place. But ammo can also degrade pretty fast. And if it's ammo that's pretty old, well, then anything's possible. Moisture attacks ammo and it degrades its efficiency. If the seal is broken between cartridge and bullet, you can have a massive degradation of the ammo. And this is what can cause rifles to explode in your face. You shoot a bullet, it gets stuck in the barrel, you don't know it, you shoot the next bullet, the thing can explode. Thermal cycling also affects the chemical performance of a bullet, of a cartridge. Okay, so if you have a bullet that's sitting in a place where you put it in the attic, and every day in the summer it reaches 120 degrees, and then it goes down to 50 degrees at night time and in the early mornings. And then when it hits winter, it goes down to minus 20 degrees and it hits again 50 degrees every single day. That has an effect. Now you have you add moisture to it, or you put it, or you keep your bullets, you keep your cartridges and your ammo in your cellar, which is damp, and you have 80% humidity there for half of the year. Well, your ammo is going to degrade faster if you keep it there. So, and I've personally seen ammo that have underperformed because of poor storage conditions or age. In fact, my grandfather, had a revolver, and he almost had a big, massive accident, a casualty, because he decided one night just to shoot in the backyard, and he shot 2 shots off, and the bullets didn't exit the barrel. He didn't know it. One bullet got stuck, the other one jammed into it, and fortunately he didn't keep shooting. But it could have exploded in his hand. And not only that, but he was pointing at night straight at a piece of metal that would have ricocheted the bullet probably back at him if it did exit the barrel. So another instance was, I think this was another revolver caliber, and shooting at a barn, fire a shot, nothing happens. You missed the entire barn. I don't know what happened, but I think you're shooting very badly today, because you didn't even hit the barn 20 feet away. And to shoot again, and then you notice, but there's a little puff of dust just here a few feet away. So the bullet just did something, did a little wild turn, like this, and then landed right in front of you. No energy, nothing. It spun out of the barrel, fortunately, but landed not far away. This is the kind of stuff that can happen with old ammunition. So, not knowing much about this rifle or the ammo or the history of any of it, we have very little clues about the conditions and what performance these bullets, even if they were 30-06. Just remember, just because you shoot, ammo that you bought at your gun dealer, 6 months ago, and you have a 30-06 that you take care of, and you're comparing this to what this guy was using, doesn't mean anything. his weapon and his ammo could have very different performance than what you think you got. We also don't know the manufacturer of the ammo. We don't know if the ammo was reloaded by a friend or by a family member or by him or by whoever he got it from. We don't know if he modified the ammo. Did he perhaps have full metal jacket and then he modified it, turned it into hollow points and then filled it with something and sealed it? He certainly has had an interest in firearms and shooting things and shooting with all kinds of calibers. So maybe he had an interest in reloading ammunition. Maybe he had an interest in modifying the ammo and doing things to the ammo besides engraving. Is it a possibility? I have not interviewed him. I don't know. I'm just throwing it out there just to say that, hey, we don't have enough information to completely throw out the possibility that the 30-06 round was the killing caliber. Okay? All right, now I'm going to move forward and just get to Chris Martenson's Peak Prosperity's second video. This is part 2. And again, I disagree with the premise in which he starts the video because he uses these conclusions from video number 1. But here, deeper into his video, he has a very interesting video that he analyzes by somebody who was in that building right behind where Charlie was. And this video captured the sniper, or the alleged sniper, running just as the audience was reacting to the shot. Okay, and I'm not going to play that video now. I think this video is long enough. But Chris makes the argument that if he says there's a mismatch, the audience is still reacting, and this sniper is already, a few paces on the run. So he estimates it would have at least taken 2 seconds for the sniper to shoot and then get up and run. And that this video shows it too fast. He was too fast, and the audience reaction, the audience is still, the people in that audience outside, that crowd, were still reacting to the shot. And he says that's a mismatch. Regarding this, I have the opposite perspective. First of all, looking at the crowd, if you're in the crowd, you just imagine yourself in the crowd. You're looking at this guy with a funny mustache. You're hearing Charlie talk. You also have your phone in your hand to text. And a gunshot goes off. Well, it could be a car that's backfired. It could be, something on campus happening on campus. Somebody shooting a firecracker. Nobody thinks it's an assassination. It's a bullet flying over their heads until there is some additional information that gives them the clue to that. Except for the people around Charlie, his security team, his friends, Frank Turek, the people who were there very close to him and who were in the security, they have already practiced it in their heads. They have already gone through this possibility of a shooting in their heads. They have. So when that happened, they are already down. They have paid close attention to Charlie. They see him fall. They're there. They react immediately. But the audience hears a bang. They don't know what it is. Then someone screams. Then they look. And then they start seeing other people get down, and they get down. They are dazed and confused, and it takes several seconds for the audience to actually jump into action and react and get down. That doesn't happen immediately. Just because the bang is not going to make you just go down. It's not. We hear bangs all day long. That is not the thing. You need additional information to make you go, this is a dangerous situation. Now let's go to the sharpshooter. Whoever the sniper is, he probably practiced shoot and run. He probably practiced that a few times, right? Maybe practiced it a lot. Shoot, get up, grab gun, run. And Chris says, well, he's jittery because this is a tense situation, and no, he's not confused. He's practiced this. Not only has he practiced it and he's ready to run, he also probably, very likely, is pumped with adrenaline at this point. And adrenaline makes you act even faster. So his reflexes were like that. He shot, he got up, he ran. Not 2 seconds, a fraction of a second, and he's gone. Okay? So I see it in exactly the opposite of what Chris Martenson sees this. I believe it's the audience that is taking time to respond and taking a time to adjust and figure out what's going on, and then jump into action, to hide, to get down on the floor, to do whatever they did. But the sniper he's prepared and he's full of adrenaline. So he is faster than anybody else. That concludes my rebuttal of Big Prosperity's videos. I hope this is helpful, because truth matters, just like Big Prosperity. Truth Matters cares about getting to the bottom of things, getting to the truth. That's the channel's name, is Truth Matters. Because truth does matter. And we want actual truth. We're not talking about my truth and your truth and in truth, whatever. We want to get down to what happened, the facts. In the next video, I'm going to show you, and this will be released maybe very soon, in the next few days, is a matrix, how you can analyze an investigation with different hypotheses. You know, if you have the working theory, which is the current narrative, and you have different hypotheses, different guesses or conjectures about how this could have gone down, how do you scrutinize them against each other, and knowing that we have only one body of evidence, okay? Using some probability theory, using some statistics, how do you analyze that? How can we map it out to basically order these things, organize them, so that we can start eliminating and putting the ones that are the most likely, pushing them forward, right? The most likely scenarios. If the suspect was not the killer, well, let's compare it to another thesis, and we devise a matrix to see how does it add up, how does it match up with the evidence, how does it match up to other theses, and we can start eliminating or organizing or arranging these and ordering these different theories. Theory is a word that I don't like to use, because a theory is something that has been substantiated. A hypothesis is something that's been formulated but not been substantiated. So I like to talk about hypotheses more than theories. But personally, at the moment, I don't think we can eliminate the official narrative completely. And let me give you some more material, just my own opinion here. For example, one of the problems we have with the evidence is the roof running and dropping down. We don't see a firearm. Now people have said, "Oh, so he dismantled that bolt-action rifle." Well, I don't see that happening. First of all, a Mauser like that does not break down like that easily. It doesn't. It takes you need minutes. You need many minutes. Even if you're very practiced, you're going to need several minutes to dismantle a thing like that, and it's going to be more parts. It's harder to carry. It's even harder to carry. Even if it's a little bit shorter, you have many now a bunch of pieces that you've got to carry on. Forget it. He didn't dismantle the gun. Maybe he dismantled the telescope. Maybe he took the scope off so that if he puts it under his clothes, the entire rifle, that it wouldn't print. And he could actually fit it because the scope makes it much more bulky. You cannot get a rifle in with a scope. Not under your clothes and under your jacket, and stick it in your pants like that. So I believe the screwdriver was just there to remove the scope. And that also explains why the scope was in a much further rearward position when it was found, because he just attached it again, but probably just hand-tied it to the gun. And since his screwdriver was still on the roof. And so it was just to keep it together, right? So he can hide it. Now, what about the gun missing from the images we see in the video? Well, the barrel of a gun, if you want to see the gun, the barrel is very, very thin. Okay, maybe the video would capture the buttstock and the main frame of the weapon. Maybe you can catch that, but the barrel is a very thin piece, and it doesn't even trigger a pixel in that video because it's too thin. So it may not appear because it just looks like it's like a thread. It's too thin for that video to see it, and it's very low resolution at that zoomed in level. So we don't see it because camera was insufficient to capture it. And again, this is just my opinion. I'm not saying this is the case. I'm just saying this is this is a possible explanation for why we don't, if it was in fact there. Okay? I'm not saying it was. I'm not saying Tyler was the shooter. I don't know. I'm giving you just reasons for the counter argument to say, look, it could have been. Don't just eliminate the possibility because you don't see it. The shadow, same thing. Some surfaces do not produce a shadow that the videos would pick up. It's just how it is. The text messages. When I heard those text messages, I was thinking, goodness, this must be contrived. Young people in their 20s and 30s do not communicate like that. It doesn't make any sense. And he starts off also by saying, "I didn't want to involve you," But all the text messages, there's no reason to involve his lover. I don't know why. If he didn't want to involve him, why did he? He doesn't. There's no reason. Later, he didn't tell him, "Okay, please drive here and just pick up my gun," or anything like that. I mean, why did he involve him? He says, "I don't know." Question marks. Question marks. My old man, the vehicle, the squad car. This is just not language that. And the whole flow of the thing, to me, it felt like somebody wrote down a confession and incriminating statements, line by line by line by line, and gave it to ChatGPT and said, now write this in a script of a lover and a killer, in the shape of text messages between them, all right, as a script of text messages, and ChatGPT spat out this thing. That's how it occurred to me. However, this is the one side. This is how I perceived it. Okay. However, normal people don't speak like that. But are we comparing a murdering psychopath's method of communication with normal people? Can we do that? Can we compare somebody who's got serious screws loose to commit an act of terrorism? an assassination against a public figure, right, and plan it out and do this. Can we compare that nutball to normal 22-year-olds? That doesn't make sense either, right? Nutball with a furry trans boyfriend? There's nothing normal about this couple. Nothing. So I can't compare them to anything that I know. And maybe they did communicate in weird ways because they are weird. So I can't eliminate that either. Can't eliminate that evidence either. I must give it some validity. Say there's a possibility. There's a strong possibility. I was surprised that the Utah state prosecutors did not add to the docket, to the list of charges, something along the lines of an act of terrorism. I'm sure it's on the books of Utah. No? I'm sure it's on the books. I haven't looked. But when you execute someone who is a public figure in public, in a crowded arena, while he's speaking on camera with microphones running, one objective, one motive must be to put the fear of violence into every conservative Christian so that they will not speak in public. This is an act of terrorism. It's, of course, it's almost a definition of terrorism. So why was that not a charge? I don't know. Maybe they said, well, the federal charges will include that. I don't know. And then I have one point regarding some of the evidence. The first video that we saw, many of us saw that video, and I think you can still find it. It's harder to find, but you can still find it. Of the actual event with material just gushing out, massive amounts of material gushing out. Very gory, graphic video. I don't want to show it. I'm sorry. I'm not going to show anything of Charlie getting shot. I want to share with you that my first thought, and I work a lot with artificial intelligence, my first thought when I looked at that was this is AI generated or AI modified. Is it? I don't know. That is just what I thought. And the reason I thought that is because it seemed unnatural. It seemed completely unnatural. It doesn't seem, and I have not encountered something like that when I hunted game. Never saw something that happening like that. Now that we know, and initially I thought that the analysis that the bullet hit a metal body armor and then ricocheted up into his neck and basically upward into his skull, that seemed to me the most likely theory or hypothesis. And I thought that's where this is going. So I was surprised to learn that he did not wear any body armor and that the bullet actually went into his torso. But now it does seem to make a lot of sense. And everything, the shirt ballooning up in that short, brief fraction of an instant also makes sense. But it adds to my suspicion, because if that happened, as we have now heard, the heart would have stopped immediately. There would have been no pumping. And if there's no pumping, then the blood gushing out, but blood wouldn't have gushed out like that. That much material would not have come out with a stopped heart. I could be wrong. But that's a question I have. That's a question I have. I don't know if that video is trustworthy. I don't know. It could be AI modified. Could not, maybe not. Again, there's equal arguments saying that no, it's the real thing. It's authentic. I don't know. But I do want to put a question mark there and say there is some uncertainty. Okay? Every theory, every hypothesis has uncertainty to it, a degree of uncertainty, and every piece of evidence also has uncertainty to it. And these are varying degrees of uncertainty. So piece of evidence A, exhibit A and exhibit B may not have the same uncertainty. So the level of confidence is going to differ between various pieces of evidence. And also the theories. So in the next video, please like and subscribe. I like to build this channel. If you want to help, I appreciate it very much. In the next video, I'm going to show you my matrix for scrutinizing various hypotheses against the evidence and against one another. Carry on doing the good work, carry on speculating, carry on theorizing and hypothesizing, and do not let go. We need the truth to come out. Let's keep calling for the Epstein files to be released. And thanks for watching Truth Matters Unplugged. This is Will. Until next time, thanks for watching.